Hello there, this is Galen Nuttall, the host of a Clean Bill of Wealth podcast. You may have noticed that this is a different episode. It doesn't have an intro with the fancy music. That's because I decided to do a series of podcast episodes specifically about financial planning for Canadian physicians. I have a Facebook group specifically for Canadian physicians. Only Canadian physicians are allowed in. And there I put out a poll and I said, hey, which of these following concepts would you like to learn more about? And I put a list out there. And the ones that were at rose to the top of the list were paying off debt versus investing. They were whole life insurance versus term insurance, how to create my own pension, how to make the most of my corporation. So I'm going to talk about that in that group. I'm going to do whiteboard videos that I'm going to put in that group explaining all these different concepts. But I realized that before I start, I really want there to be a fundamental understanding around financial planning for Canadian physicians. And it is this, that traditional financial planning advice does not apply in many ways to Canadian physicians. It's not good enough. And I'm going to tell you why. If you were to get out there and read articles about financial planning in Canada or Google concepts, you're probably going to come across a couple of top ideas, one of which is going to be, the tax-free savings account versus the RRSP. Do I pay off debt or do I invest? What kinds of insurance should I have? What kinds should I have? Where should, what amounts should I have? All of the answers to those questions that are being answered out there in the world from a traditional financial planning sense, like the rules of thumb and like how you should do these things, is mostly for people who don't have access to a corporation. And physicians do have access to a corporation in Canada. And that's why I feel like once you add that layer of complexity to the situation, it starts to shift the way that we start answering those questions, like paying off debt versus investing as an example. And the other thing for Canadian physicians that I find is that there's a lot of information out there, either among colleagues who have endeavored to educate their colleagues around financial planning in Canada, or there's a lot of advice coming from the States from some big name financial, like some doctors who've taken on like educating their colleagues around financial planning. And what I'll say is a few things about that. One is that stuff coming from the States, America is a very different place when it comes to financial planning. They have different rules around capital gains. They have different rules around taxes on death. Just as a really big difference, down there, I read from one of the doctors down there that talks about financial planning. He said, I read an article where he said that American doctors, most of them won't owe any taxes when they pass away. And that's completely different from Canada, obviously. Like I remember when I read that and I was like completely different. And he even did an episode about Canada. And after he did it, I emailed him to let him know that there are a few things that he should be aware of. And one of them was capital gains and one of them was taxes on death that are completely different up here. So when it comes to the corporation, there's also some, debate out there as to whether doctors should incorporate or not. In general, I find that most doctors are incorporated and should be incorporated. And the reason why it adds a layer of complexity is suddenly you've got a way to control the way that you are paid. And it doesn't exist if you're an employee. And I was on a physician's podcast a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about the corporate structure, and he said, this is a gift to Canadian physicians. And I believe that too. I do know that there's been some changes that have made it maybe somewhat less attractive than it was in the past, but it is still a really great idea for most of the physicians I meet, and it is a gift. So you wonder, why is it a gift? In case you don't know, the reason why it's a gift is because you can have some control over how you receive your income. So if you're an employee or if you don't have a corporation, typically you're going to take your income. You're not going to have any control about how high up you go in the marginal tax rates, so how high up you go with taxes, and you're just going to have to send money off to taxes, by default. You're not going to have options. When it lands in your corporation and you don't need it personally, you have some ways of building wealth in a tax-deferred manner, and I'm not going to go into that today, but ways of building wealth in a tax-deferred manner that are really attractive, and it does impact questions like, should I have a TFSA or an RSP, or should I invest inside of my corporation, or should I pay off debt or invest? All of these things are very much influenced by the tax implications of corporate planning. And the reason why I know so much about corporate planning is my own dad's a physician. And when I became an advisor, I decided to get really good at corporate planning because I found not a lot of advisors necessarily understood the corporate structure and how it works. And I was like, I want to get really good at this, really understand the corporation inside and out. And that's what I've done. And the other thing I wanted to point out around financial planning is I do have evidence to show that a lot of physicians are confused around financial planning. I did a survey of Canadian physicians. Over 100 of them responded. So if you're one of them, I thank you very much. It was a little while ago, so you might not remember. But I asked about how confident you are. Like I asked, how confident are you that you're doing the right thing with your plan? You're very confident, you're somewhat confident, or you're confused and you just wish you knew who to trust and what to do. 58% of the physicians who responded said that they were confused about where to start with financial planning, and they didn't know who to trust. And then I asked about the corporate structure. And I said, how confident are you that you're using your corporate structure efficiently? 80% said that they were not at all confident or only somewhat confident that they were using their corporation efficiently. Another reason that this is the case, in my opinion, is that there's a lot of great physician podcasts out there who are endeavoring to teach their colleagues what they've learned about financial planning. But you'll have one physician say one thing like, hey, there's this concept, it's the best thing ever. And you'll have another physician stand right next to them or right after them say that's the worst thing ever. And so it's very hard as a physician to be kind of between these two things. And at the end of the day, like if you think about the average Canadian, they have options, they have things they can access like an RSP or a TFSA. So if you think of your financial well-being as a ship, these things are added to the ship to then speed the ship up. Like if you use the TFSA properly, if you use the RSP properly, it's like adding a sail to the ship that's going to speed it up. And in my opinion, the corporation can be the biggest sail when used properly, but it can be the biggest anchor when used improperly, in the sense that it can be the thing that most impulses someone towards their financial goal. Usually retirement is high on the list for physicians, or at least the ability to retire, even when I meet physicians who love what they do. They oftentimes say, I would feel a lot more comfortable if I knew exactly what day I could flip a switch and stop working if I didn't want to keep working, and only keep working if I really love it. So that sail can be something that speeds you up towards your goal of the corporation if you're using it efficiently, and it can be an anchor that can slow you down if you're not using it efficiently, because there are a lot of tax implications around passive income inside of a corporation, inside of investments that grow inside of a corporation. So at the end of the day, what I want you to know is a lot of the advice out there does not apply to physicians because of the unique experience around the corporate structure. Now, so the next topics I'm going to tackle are, should I pay off debt or should I invest? What kinds of, whole life insurance versus term insurance. That's going to be a hot one. If you would like to know any more about the work that I do specifically around like fee-based planning, which is very popular among physicians, head on over to my website, galenhelpsdocs.com. So that's GALEN helpsdocs.com. There you can see where to follow me on YouTube if you'd like to watch my videos, my whiteboard videos where I talk about the same concepts. And if you'd like to book a free, no obligation phone call to just take a look at, are you a good fit for my planning services, whether it be around full financial planning, investments, insurance, portfolio review. Get on there and book that, and happy to talk to you. So thanks so much for checking out this episode, and be sure to stay tuned to further ones where I delve into financial concepts for Canadian physicians. Thank you so much for joining me.